Daydreaming about dragons. I haven't recorded in a while, and my friend Ray Otis from Plundergrounds kind of put out a thing that he wanted to record. And so I said, if you put out something, I'll put out something. And he did put out a video today. And so I'm putting out a video too. I've got one in the hopper that I hate. And it might be that I'm being too critical, or it might be that I'm right. And that thing should just stay in the hopper forever and never get published because it's bad. Either way, Ray posted a segment about what it takes to be a good player. And I did not listen to his segment, so I could just record my own and then I'll go listen to his. So these are my thoughts. I think I talk about GMing a lot, but I don't really talk about what I like what I try to do as a player, what I like to see at the table as a player. And I'm going to try to post. I came up with 3 things that I think are kind of system agnostic, right? And different things are going to matter for different games. But I think these 3 things will kind of work for everything. So here we go. What makes for a good player? Number 1, using other people's details, right? Now that can be remembering things that the GM says. It doesn't mean you have to remember every NPC's name or remember every little detail or piece of world history or whatever. But boy, is it gratifying when folks remember stuff. And you know what? My next episode is going to have how to get players to remember your weird little history details. Yeah, that's coming next. So that'll be the next episode. But this is not about the GM. This is about the players. And it doesn't even have to be GM details. It can be other players' details. It's about using those details and reacting to them, right? So if your buddy is playing a warrior who is a badass Praetorian guard and is, a bodyguard to the emperor, act in awe of them or act appropriately, act how, if you hate the emperor, ask them, why would you serve such a person? Act in shock that they're noble if you're surprised that a noble person would guard such a terrible emperor, right? Give them context and react to that context to make it more real for everyone. If they're a great wizard, ask them things that you would ask a wise person. Ask them for advice. If they're a great priest, ask them questions about the gods. React to them. Pay them deference. And react to their context that they're creating. React to those details. And I feel like that is how we make things real for one another. By looking at each other's bits and pieces and fictional details and reacting to them in cool ways. And it doesn't have to be the obvious way. I promise you, if you take in their details and you react, it'll be a surprise to people. Even if it's just super obvious to you. Super obvious. Here's an example. One of the first times I played a role-playing game with my wife, Johniki. I think it was Burning Wheel. I think it was an early edition of Burning Wheel. And I had this weird scenario where a bunch of... the wizard had died, and the apprentice and the servant who lived in the tower and an orc who the wizard had adopted, who also lived in the tower, were all there. And people were going to be coming to get the magic items in the tower, blah, 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 blah. Cool. My wife was playing the orc. And after the game, she said, I really wanted to eat the wizard when he died because it said I'm a cannibal. And I thought my character might do that to kind of honor them and remember them. And I was like, why didn't you do that? She was like, well, I don't know. I thought it was silly. Do it. Do it. It's cool stuff. So react to the world around you. React to those details. Use them. Use them. If the GM says, you're sitting at the bar and there's weird names carved into the bar and the adventurers have been coming there for years and carving the names of their friends into it. Maybe to remember them when they've passed away on delves. Read a name. And when one of your friends passes away, go back to that bar and carve their name in. Become a part of that. And that's how this stuff becomes more real. When we use the details, we interact with them. And now one of your friend's character's names is carved into the bar. And now that is real. Now that's good stuff. All right. Shall we go to number 2? So, make a character that works, right? And this is a tricky one. This is something you've got to go system to system. Make a character that allows you to address the premise. Make a character that allows you to interact with the other characters in a way that is interesting. Now, that might mean you make a character who's a team player for some games. And in other games, it might mean that you make a character who can bounce off the other players and get into conflicts with them. All depends on the game, all depends on the context. Ask those questions. And then there's a third thing you want to make a character to do. And that is a character that allows you to pursue the things that you find interesting. So you want to make a character that allows you to do 3 things. Interact with the premise of the game, interact with other characters, and then interact with the world in a way that is interesting to you. If you love dragons and you play a character who is terrified of dragons and will run away and will never interact with a dragon or even, look in the great library of the elves for information about dragons, that's going to be a bummer. You're going to have to miss out on things that you really love. So make a character that allows you to pursue that stuff. Don't make a character that's going to make you run from things that you find interesting. Right? This is kind of like a triple threat here, right? And I'm combining 2. This is like number 2 and number 3 put together, but I came up with a different third one. So we're going to have a different number 3. But this is 2 and 3. Make a character that allows you to interact with the premise of the game, right? If you're playing D&D, don't make a character who thinks going into dungeons is stupid. That's not good. That's not going to work. Make a character that allows you to play the game. And if it's Monster Hearts, then you're going to have to be bouncing around in romantic drama. Make a character who's going to do that. Don't make a character that's going to antagonize the table when they don't like player versus player action. Then don't make the character who's going to make those decisions. You get to lay that foundation. And let me tell you, here's the secret. Your character doesn't exist. So if you make a character and they're making decisions that are causing problems, you can change those decisions. They're fictional. And you and your friends are real. Don't tell anyone. All right? So when you're making a character, make sure you're making the character that is going to allow you to have a good time. When I was playing, I think I've told this story before. I was playing Houses of the Blooded with my friend Anthony, and he made this just kind of evil jerk wizard sorcerer who probably would have been a villain in any other game. And whenever cool things would happen, Anthony would say like, "Oh, my character wouldn't do that. He'd be off in the alley, being scheming, and trying to make a plan to do something evil." And eventually I just said, Anthony, I really like gaming with you, and this damned character isn't allowing me to play with my friend. And I really would like to game with my friend. So could you make a character that allows me to play a game with Anthony, whom I adore? Please? And I put it that way, made it positive. Didn't just say, stop playing an asshole. I put it in a positive way. Hey, I like you. I want to game with you. Play a character that's going to allow me to game with you. Whoop, Pupper Cat wants in the room. Here we go. Come on in, pup. So, make a character that allows you to do these things. The premise, the other characters, and the parts of the game that are interesting to you. All right, on to number 3. Number 3 is a real easy one, and it kind of is everything, I think. Ask questions. Asking good questions is so key. Ask questions about the setting to the GM. Ask questions about to the players and their characters about how they fit into the setting. Ask lots of questions. You know, combat's about to pop off. Ask questions. Get the context so you understand what's around. Ooh, I didn't know the lava was there. If I'd known the lava was there, I would have pushed the goblin into it. It's cool to ask questions. It's always cool for me. Hopefully it's always cool at the table where you are. You can ask questions to get an idea of the layout and where people are. You can ask questions about the context of things. You know, how elves work. Hey, I'm playing an elf. How does this, what, you know, what kind of house was I brought in? You know, how much can I make up and how much can you make up? Get that down. Find out where everybody's dials are. You know, you don't have to have it all perfect, but it's a good idea to have an idea. And ask players other questions about their characters. Anthony, who I talked about in the last example, he is who I gamed with 100 years ago at Houses of the Blooded. He is now playing in the Trophy Gold game. And he asks the most amazing questions. Like his questions are spectacular. He always gets cool answers out of players about their characters. And very often it isn't even his character. It's just Anthony. It's just Anthony asking, hey, well, that character sounds cool. What's their religion like? You know? You're playing a Warforged type mannequin person. Can you feel anything? Great question. Good stuff. What's your religion like? You know, what does it say? What do they believe? Ask those questions. And you can ask the questions of the GM too. Get an idea of what's going on, how things work, all that stuff. So those are my 3 things. There you go. That's what I look for in a player. Use the details that others put forward. Use them. Put yourself into them. Interact with them. Muck them about. Make a character that allows you to interact with the premise and the other characters and parts of the world that you find interesting so that you can have fun. I've seen it. I'm not saying this, I haven't seen it. I've seen people make characters that just don't allow them to go after things that they think are interesting. So make that character. And it's also cool if you're, you know, a veteran player to make a character that allows you to go after new things. Shout out to Aaron, who played one of the most badass elf. Yeah, one of the most badass. I was about to get a very strongly worded email from Aaron, who played the most badass elf ever, the Herald of the Dawn. And then in a subsequent campaign years later, made another elf who was much more social. You know, another Burning Wheel elf. And rather than try to recreate the Herald of the Dawn, which is impossible, of course, he pushed himself and kind of like went into a new area of elfdom. Still elfdom, but it allowed him to play a game that was interesting to him, but he wanted to push himself. So that's cool too. You don't always have to go to the same areas, but just be aware that you want to play, you don't want to play a character that boxes you in. And if it does box you in, have it box you in ways that you find interesting. And then third, ask questions. Get context. If you can't picture it, ask more questions. Sometimes the GM has thought about this adventure so much that describing it, doesn't come as first nature. So you gotta ask follow-up questions. Believe me, I love when people ask questions when I'm running a game. I love it. So ask. Cool. How about you? What do you think makes for a great player? What do you look for when you're playing in a game? I'd love to hear from you. Let's see what the Inspiration Goat has to say this week. Good one, Inspiration Goat. An oldie, but a goodie. The Sopranos. right? It kind of ushered in a new era of TV, this kind of, I don't know, HBO television shows. It kind of is a new era. Sopranos, The Wire. I feel like you can trace a line from there to Game of Thrones and everything that's come after. So what can we learn from The Sopranos and bring to our gaming? Okay, a couple of things that have played out over the, 7 seasons of The Sopranos? Cool. The dream sequences. Tony has these really vivid dreams where things come out, but they're also, they're really strange and they're kind of wondrous, surreal at times, but they also have a really strong sense of place. And I'm not just saying that because they were very often filmed in Asbury Park, a few miles from where I grew up. There's just something to them that feels like a dream. And that's valuable. Check that out. Throw dream sequences in there. Let players interact with something happening that's just strange, particularly if it is a very down-to-earth game. If you've got a very down-to-earth game, if you've got a very strange game, let the players deal with things that are very strange, right? Mix it up. Let them do things in the dream that they wouldn't normally have to do, right? Have your vigilante have a dream about doing their taxes. You know, their clown prince, supervillain arch rival is helping them with their taxes. Flip it up. And I think the dream sequences offer a lot in The Sopranos. I think we could do a whole show just on dream sequences. So go back, look it up, check out The Sopranos, check out their dream sequences. But there's more than that we can learn from this TV show, which is kind of a classic. They also show family life in a very mundane way that felt very real. That there were things that happened in that show that could have happened in any house. And I think, yes, they were criminals. They were doing terrible things. Many of them were sociopaths. These were not nice people. But if you twist that a little bit, there's a lot you can take from their lives to all kinds of adventuring life, from superheroes to dungeon delvers to occult, investigators, whatever it is. That very often our characters are doing things that are exciting and that most folks don't do. They're having to deal with life and death in a way that the average person doesn't. And putting in family details and family relationships makes those things recognizable, which we've talked about before, and makes them more real. So check that out. Check out how to make family situations come up in your games. You're planning a delve to go take down the Iron Lich and steal their treasures. That's awesome. But your sister's child's having a birthday. So can you put that delve off for a month? How awesome would that be? So check that out. Don't underestimate the power and the kind of detail of how family can get in there and make these things feel different, Very often you're gaming for a long time. You kind of feel like you've done everything. Throw in the family details. And don't have all of your characters be, have a backstory where their family is all dead. And if they do, then who's their found family? Who have they gathered around them to support them and love them? It's an important question. So bring in the family, and then bring in those things that can only happen with the people we care about. So the show does a really interesting job of doing something that I've been talking about in Daydreaming About Dragons for a while, which is establishing a pattern and then breaking that pattern, and making the breaking of the pattern interesting. And so I'm going to point out the way that married life works among the men in the Sopranos crew, right? In this crime family. Very often, these are unhappy marriages, and even when they seem happy, the men have women on the side, not in a cool way, not in a hey, we're both seeing other people, poly way, but in a really dishonest way. It's just not cool. But then every once in a while, there's a love match. There's someone who just doesn't have anyone on the side, and it's kind of this interesting unicorn thing. I think only 2 people I could think of in that show have that. And I think it's really interesting. So check that out. Make a pattern happen, but every once in a while break the pattern and have that be a really special thing. If you've got this, and you could Game of Thrones that up too, right? If you've got these dynastic nobles who all want to marry for power and in the glory of their clan, then all of a sudden someone has a love match. And that's really different. And people would notice that. So mix it up. Establish a pattern. Break the pattern in cool ways, right? I think we can. That works for that idea. Establish a pattern, break a pattern. It works for almost everything. So, and it works again in Sopranos, particularly with the relationships. I think it's really, really interesting. And really, the bedrock of the Sopranos show is someone to talk to, right? That show happened because it had a very special pitch. Head of a crime family goes to a shrink. And they didn't necessarily play it for laughs, although there were some very funny moments. It was pretty earnest. And maybe that might have been the least realistic thing that happened in the whole show. But check that out. Check out that option where the character has someone to talk to. And this is coming up this has also come up in Daydreaming About Dragons before. Find that person and ask. You can ask the player the question if you don't know, or if that concept didn't come baked into the character. Hey, who can this character really talk to? Who do they tell their troubles? Who do they bounce ideas off of? Who do they go to for their kind of therapy, even if it isn't formally therapy? Do they go to a priest? Do they go to a bartender? Is it their swords teacher? Who is the person who is kind of someone who knows a lot about their background but is a bit of an outsider and can give them an outsider's point of view? Who is that person for them? And that's a really valuable thing to establish. It can be super cool also if it's another player. That can be awesome. I feel like Luke is playing that in our Rebel Crowns game. If you haven't seen them play their priest of the paths and ways, check it out because it's really cool. And seeing them play this priest, seeing Strash's badass swordsman and Lauren's traumatized but also growing into her power witch queen go to Luke's priest and get wisdom is really, really, really neat. It makes for some powerful moments. And there have been, when I go back and I listen to the episodes, I almost always go back and listen to the parts where Luke's priest and the rebel queen, Lauren's character, talk. Luke says some really profound things about trauma and healing. It's really beautiful. So check that out. I'll have a link to the playlist for Rebel Crown in the show notes. But more importantly, what this is really about is having someone for your characters to talk to. It can be a good way for a player to kind of digest all the things their character has gone through. And it can be a good way for the character to verbalize things that are kind of brewing and happening in their head. Thank you, Inspiration Goat, for dropping that classic TV show into my lap and reminding me that it has some good stuff for us to think about for the gaming table. And thank you, listener, for listening to our show. That is it. And if you would like to support this show, there are links in the show notes. The Black Trans COVID-19 response grant. There is Black Lives Matter. If you would like to support the show, please give the money there. There are folks supporting the show in a monthly way, and when that money gets cashed, it goes to those goes to those charities. It is nice to think that these daydreams make the world a better place in some way. That makes me very happy. It pleases my inner dragon, so to speak. So if you feel like you need to monetarily support the show, that is one way to do it. If you would like to support the show in another way, you can drop me an email at judd.karlman@gmail.com and let me know what's going on at your table. Has The Sopranos inspired any gaming goodness with you? Have you given thought to what good players can bring to your table, and what would you like your dream players to skills for your dream players to have? What is your thoughts on that? I had 3. What are your 3? I'm always curious. I always want this to be a conversation and not a pulpit. So drop me a line. You can either do it through the email, or you can go to Twitter at InspirationGoat, all one word, and drop me a line. That's me behind the Inspiration Goat. I have a fictional goat Twitter account. Yes, I do. If you'd like to follow that account, I drop links when the show comes out, and I also put out book quotes and game prompts. All kinds of stuff is coming out of that Twitter account. Drop me a line. Let me know how it goes. You can also use the Anchor app and send me an MP3. You can record an MP3 and email it as an attachment. So however you'd like to do it, I would love to hear from you. Thank you for being patient as I've taken these latter holiday months off. This will likely be, I'm going to get one more, you know what? I'm going to put the gauntlet down, so to speak. I'm going to get one more show in before 2020 goes to an end, and we welcome 2021 in. And so I'll see you one more time in 2020, and hopefully you'll be there to listen. And I look forward to hearing your feedback, either through Twitter or email or MP3 or Raven, however you want to get it to me. I look forward to hearing from you. I hope your gaming is going well. I hope your year is ending well. If you're having a tough time during the holiday season, I hear you. As someone who suffers from regular old depression and winter depression, I hear you. And I look forward to seeing you one more time before 2020 is over. We will talk about, we're gonna talk about as a GM, how to get players to care about history that you make up for your world. I think that's a topic. It came up in the player bit in the beginning of this top of the show. We're going to get to it. So I look forward to hearing how you do it, and I look forward to hearing your feedback on my thoughts, and we'll see what Inspiration Goat has for me. Okay? Hang in there, hold fast, and I'll talk to you soon. Daydreaming about dragons. I'm thinking about playing with more players and the different skills that you need for that. Because for a long time, I had been saying that my favorite types of games are 1 GM and 1 player, or 1 GM and 2 players. And I wonder if that is because I was covering for a deficit in aggressively framing scenes and jumping from scene to scene, right? That's a heck of a skill. And the more players you get, the more difficult it is. This sucks.